Okay, so I've got a sample that I want to analyze on the UV-Vis spectrometer. I take an absorption spectrum of it. My sample is 9-fluorinone and acetonitrile. That's my sample. And I have some acetonitrile here in a beaker. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a clean pasture pipette and rinse out my cuvettes with some acetonitrile. So I'm rinsing out my cuvettes with some acetonitrile. Oops. And I'm going to collect the waste. This is going to go in the organic waste container. One of these cuvettes I will then fill with acetonitrile. Let's do that with this one. This is going to be my reference cuvette. These really only need to be filled about 3/4 of the way full. So there's my reference. And then the other I'm going to fill with the 9-fluorinone and acetonitrile. Now, if you were worried about diluting this sample, I would recommend getting a new pipette. But for this, I just want to see what the spectrum looks like, so I'm just going to use the same pipette. So I'm going to put my reference in the back position. Oh, did that wrong. So the light beam is going this direction, so I need to make sure my frosted sides are facing me. Make sure that the sides of your cuvettes are clean. Wipe them with the Kim wipe. Be gentle, but wipe them with the Kim wipe. So there's my reference, and here is the sample. Okay, so now the sample and the reference are inserted. I've closed the sample compartment. I'm going to click on Setup. What this is telling me is that the spectrum is going to be collected from 200 to 800 nanometers. It starts at the longer wavelengths at the red edge and goes down to the blue. Here, I could change the amount of averaging that is done at each wavelength. Right now, we are we're averaging the data at each wavelength, at each nanometer, every 1 nanometer. You could set this to go from every 0.02 nanometers. You can also adjust the scan rate in nanometers per minute, and that will, let's see, we can do 300, maybe. And that will affect the data interval. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it at 600. That's an average. That's pretty reasonable. This is just to see what the spectrum looks like. On our y-axis, we will have absorbance. If you really wanted percent transmittance, you could get that. And then under options, you can adjust the spectral bandwidth. Right now, we have our slits set so that the spectral bandwidth is 2 nanometers. This could be adjusted. The other thing in here is that we are in double beam mode, which means that the back cuvette is the reference and the front is the sample. There are other options. You could just run one, either front or back, or 2, and you could double reverse. Basically, you put the reference in the front and the sample in the back, but we'll just go with double. Stick with that. And then we are going to be looking at using both the UV and the visible lamps. Everything else under here is just sort of for things that either we don't have connected, like different accessories. For the auto store, this is one of the very last tabs. This is a file storage thing. So what's going to happen is when I click start, the software is going to prompt me for a file name. I'll type that in. If you wanted that to happen after the sample was collected, after the spectrum was collected, you could do storage on prompt to end. Or if you didn't want that to happen at all, you could click storage off. Okay, so I'm going to collect the spectrum from 800 down to 200 just by clicking start, and here it's asking me for a file name. Known. That's fine. You can see the spectrum beginning to appear. We won't see much until maybe 450 nanometers, something like that. So for this scan, I basically went through the whole visible and UV spectrum. Now seeing the spectrum, it might be smart the next time if I want to only go from 200 to 500, and I don't need to worry about collecting this. It saves a little bit of time. So this is what I expect to see with this sample. There's sort of a weak band here. We can auto scale this. This is going to max out, but there is a much stronger absorption band here. And then this is the UV region that just maxes out. So right now, the software is asking for the next sample. So if I put a sample name in here and click OK, it's going to start another run. So this is one of the things where if you want to have the file save, auto file save off, I kind of understand, because you can't really do anything with the spectrum at this point because it wants you to run another one. You could click finish. So it's kind of up to you. Now, if I was interested in one of these, this peak in here, I know some absorbance is over 3. I probably want to dilute my sample a little bit. But this is a peak that I may be interested in as well, and so my absorbance is below 1, and so that would be an acceptable spectrum for that region of the absorption.